Hello, students. Welcome back to the next lecture on mathematical physics. And today we have lecture number 7, and where we are going to discuss some of the additional properties and consequences of having vector spaces. So, in the last few classes, we started with the abstract notations, and then we have seen the definition for a vector space. And the definition for the vector space requires the concept of the field. And for our purposes, a field can be a set of real numbers, and that's enough for us. We're not going to work with many problems on fields, therefore, you don't have to worry about that. The set of all real numbers is a field. Similarly, the set of all complex numbers is also a field. For our purposes, these two fields are enough. Especially in the case of the quantum mechanics, we will be having the set of all complex numbers as the field for use with our vector space. So this is what is required for the time being, and especially exactly in the last class what we have seen is we have discussed something about the operator. An operator is also known as map. Either you say map or mapping, or it is also alternatively known as transformation. So these are the different terms that are used to describe the same thing. So we will be frequently using the word operator because in the quantum mechanics we have the this kind of terminology like position operator, momentum operator, Hamiltonian operator, etc. So basically, the operator is mathematically otherwise known as mapping, or it is also known as transformation. And out of the several possible uh, options for the operators, one special type of operator that's very important is linear operators. And in the last class, we have seen the definition for a linear operator. Definition for linear operator means given an operator to you, how will you determine whether the given operator is linear or not? Okay, in order to verify that, you need some kind of testing mechanism. Okay, so that is a defining property of the linear operator. And we have seen what is that in the last class. And here for your reference, right now it is written the same thing here, that if you are going to represent a capital T is the operator, T is used for transformation. Okay, so any kind of symbol is fine. And in the quantum mechanics, we will put a small hat on top of the operator. So that is the reason why I have written, so that we can have a similar kind of symbol. But remember one thing, that there is no compulsion for you to put the hat, small hat looking like unit vector. That kind of notation is not required. If you simply write capital T, it's enough. You don't have to put the hat on top of it. But I would like to show the different possible ways in which people write, so that if you're going to see something like that, things should not confuse you. So the point to be noted is that how do I know whether a given operator is capital T? How do I know if the given operator is linear? The answer is you'll have to verify whether this first equation, whatever is written here for the addition of the vectors, and then the second property where you have the scalar multiplication, these two things have to be satisfied. So if you are going to have an operator where the two of the equations are satisfied, then we make a conclusion that the given operator is linear, otherwise not. And why do you want to have this important conclusion? In fact, we have seen the importance that the linear operators will preserve the mathematical structure, original structure. If the original structure is a vector space, then after the linear transformation, the resulting mathematical object will also be a vector space. So this kind of structure preserving property is there for linear operators, and that is the primary reason why it is of importance. And in addition to that, coming to a practical situation of quantum mechanics, the operators that are going to be used there would be the one corresponding to the physical quantities, such as position, linear momentum, angular momentum, or the total energy could be in Hamiltonian. So all of these things are represented by operators, and not only that just operators, but they are also linear operators. So therefore, linear operator plays a very important role in both mathematical theory as well as in practical applications. And therefore, it is very much required, or it is very much essential to know how to verify whether a given operator is linear or not. So these are the 2 points that is very important. And coming to the information about the v1 and v2, you are going to have several elements from a vector space. v1, v2, v3, etc. They are the collection of elements in a vector space. That is how the meaning comes, and it is explicitly written down here. v1 comma v2 belongs to capital V. So capital V is a vector space. Vector space means nothing but it is set of elements, and the set of elements will satisfy a set of axioms or properties. That's all. Okay, vector space means it's only a set of elements that will satisfy a collection of properties. Okay, something like 10 properties. Okay, the count depends on how we are going to count, so don't have to worry about whether it is 10 or 9. Okay, but you will be having a list of axioms that when it is satisfied by the collection of elements, we say that that collection of elements is a vector space. So that is the capital V, and v1 comma v2 will be any two of them. So there can be more elements there, but for the time being we need two of them in order to make this definition. And similarly, in the case of the product, you need only one of the elements there, so we can use v1. And another important point is that the alpha, namely the scalar, that has to come from one of the fields. Okay, especially it could be a field of real numbers, that means set of real numbers, or it can be from a set of complex number. So it cannot come something randomly. Okay, so that is a point that should be noted down. So alpha has to come from the field, and v1 comma v2 that we are going to use, they have to come, or they have to be picked out from the given vector space capital V. So this is the definition that should be clear, because you are going to apply this definition in order to verify. Now, the important point that what is that we are going to see in today's class is that we would like to know how to apply this equation and then make a decision on whether a given operator is linear or not. So for that purpose, we will take one or two examples and then solve. That is one thing. And while doing the solution methodology, sometimes this particular special situation will be very useful. So I would like to make a point about that. So what is the special situation is, you have this second property. That means the operator operating on the scalar multiplication of the vector. Scalar multiplication of the vector is equivalent to scaling of a vector. If I have a vector of some length, scaling means I can enlarge the vector or I can shrink the vector. So that is how you can understand by the kind of alpha that you are going to put. And then in the case of the real Euclidean space, it will be easy to visualize that shrinking of the vector and the enlargement of the vector. But in the case of the complex field, direct imagination is not possible, but a similar situation is happening in this mathematical space. So the point is here that this kind of second property for the linearity, alpha has to come from either the set of real numbers or from the set of complex numbers. In both the cases, something is special. What is special is 0 is there. 0 belongs to the set of real number, and at the same time 0 also belongs to the set of complex numbers. So for the time being, let us consider the real number set. Then as you can see that alpha is can be 0. Okay, 0 is always a valid option for the problem under consideration, and therefore as a special case, if I substitute 0 here, what happens is that the operator operating on 0 times v1, that's what is written here, and then finally the expression will become 0. That means whenever 0 is the element that is taken from the field, then the resulting mathematical object, that means the vector, becomes 0 here. Okay, so this is important. Why it is important is this property may not be satisfied in some problems, or some problem means for some operators. Okay, only for the case of the linear operator this will be satisfied. That is what I am trying to say. Okay, just because 0 you are multiplying, it is not necessary that you will get 0 all the time. For linear operator only it will come like that. For nonlinear operators, t operating on 0 times v1 will not be 0. Need not be 0. That is what I meant to say. And therefore this will be a very important testing mechanism in order to verify a given operator is linear or not. So let us take now one or two examples and then see how we can apply this. And similarly, you can consider some kind of special situation of -1, and wherein if you substitute alpha equal to -1, we can have a result like this, which will be easy to remember. that an operator operating on the negative vector is equal to the negative of the operator operating on the positive vector. Okay, it is some kind of equation that is looking like odd function, right? You have the definition for the even function and the definition for the odd function. So this particular expression looks like the definition for odd function, f of minus x equal to minus of f of x. So that's how it looks like, and therefore this is little easier to remember, and therefore sometimes this also can be used as a testing mechanism for the verification of linearity. And as I already told you, why these linear operators are important, I already told you. In addition to that, there is something that is interesting to note, at least for the purpose of application to quantum mechanics. Now, what is the conclusion based on the definition of the linear operator is that if you take any matrix and then do some verification, you will discover that all matrices will satisfy the two properties that we have seen, which means that the set of all matrices are behaving like, or they will behave like linear operators. Therefore, we say that matrices can be considered as linear operator. So once this is clear, namely that the different operators like the projection, rotation, reflection, etc., they can be represented by matrices. The meaning is that such a kind of physical situations like rotating or the reflection, etc., they will correspond to a linear operator. If rotation is a matrix and a matrix is a linear operator, then what is the meaning? The meaning is rotation is a linear operator. So like this, you are going to make a conclusion. And similarly, if you are going to the quantum mechanical situation, then we will be making, or we will be having the situation where the position is an operator, linear momentum, angular momentum, total energy, namely the Hamiltonian, etc., all of them will be linear operators. So what do you mean by that, or how do I know whether they are linear operators? That you have to consider these two equations that we have. We will give this as an equation number 1 and this is equation number 2. So these two equations will be satisfied by the Hamiltonian operator. They have the same two equations has to be satisfied by the momentum and position operator, etc. So usually the physical observables that are there in the quantum mechanics, they all will satisfy these two properties, and therefore they are going to be called by the name linear operators. So therefore there is quite a lot of interest in learning the linear operator because of several interesting properties. And one of the main property, of course, as I already told you, is the mathematical structure preserving property. Okay, if you start with the original vector space, then it will remain as a vector space after doing the linear transformation. So that is a very important transformation. And in addition to that, we are going to have another conclusion because of this linear property. Anyway, these things we will see in terms of some examples. Okay, if you take an example and then see, we will be able to understand in a much clear way. And therefore, let me go to the board and then show one or two examples. And before going to example, I would like to make a statement that let us combine the two of them. Here we have two equations, right? So let us combine and then write it in form of single equation so that we will get one more new concept there. Okay, so that I will show it now. Okay, let me go to the board and then explain. So this is the place where this is there. So here you have the two properties that are that I have been explaining, and we would like to merge them and then write down. The concept in merging is quite simple. What is the concept is that you have the T operator. The T operator is operating on V1. So the question comes, how many times V1? So which means that already 1 times V1 is there, right? So even though nothing is there, nothing is explicitly written, the meaning is 1 times V1 and 1 times V2. Which means that if you are going to compare with the second property, it's very clear that we are taking alpha equal to 1 and then using here. So therefore, alpha equal to 1 has been already used in the first property. So that is the point to be noted. And therefore, we would like to merge these two things based on this idea. That's what I'm trying to write down. And so that will be equal to, you see, 1 times the t operating on v1 plus 1 times t operating on v2. And here the point that I would like to mention is that you can use the caret means some kind of hat on top of the symbol t, okay, looking like unique vector, right? So you can use this or you need not use. Here you see that I'm not using any caret or I'm not using any cap on top of the operator. So therefore it is not necessary actually. Initially means when you are beginning or you are a first time learner, then explicitly we would like to say that t is an operator, whereas v1 is not operator, v1 is an element in the vector space. So just to make sure that you understand what is t and what is v1, we try to keep some kind of distinction by putting a hat on top of that. But once things are clear, there is no need for you to put any hat on this. That's first point. Second point is that v1 and v2 are the elements in the vector space. Every element in the vector space is called vector itself. Okay, even if they are matrices, they are called vectors. This point I already explained in the last class. Okay, it could be any mathematical object. It can be a polynomial. Okay, it can be any function. Even then we will call by the name vector. Okay, why do you want to call by the name vector? Is because it's a vector space. Already you are given the name for the space as vector space, and therefore every element will be called by the name vector. And therefore the usual two-dimensional, three-dimensional concept of putting arrow, you used to put an arrow on top of that, right? That arrow is no longer required because it's already understood that it's an element of the vector space, and the element is a more generic one, okay, not necessarily Euclidean. Okay, it is not restricted to the Euclidean, and therefore it is going to represent a more general concept, and therefore there is no need for putting arrow on top of v1 and v2. So these are the points that you have to remember. And once this is clear, let us now combine the second one. So here the point is that I would like to say that alpha, I already explained you, alpha is going to be 1. I have given the equation number 1 and 2. So if you combine them, we will be getting, we can write down like this. So here what is the clear is that whatever is there I have written here. The difference is why do you want to consider a special situation for 1 here? So rather we will consider an arbitrary or general situation of alpha. Alpha is a number coming from the set of all real numbers. You'll have to pick out randomly or whatever selectively from the set of real numbers. Okay, that is a field. Or you can also choose it from the complex number set. That is fine. But alpha has to come from there. You cannot, or you are not allowed to pick up the some number from somewhere else. Okay, that's a point to be noted. And similarly, why only 1 here? We can put anything, any other value here according to the second rule, and therefore already alpha is used here, and therefore let us use another scalar from the set of all real number field. So if it is the case, the correspondingly the right hand side also will be written down like this. This one is that one, and therefore this alpha will be that alpha, and similarly this one is this one, and therefore this beta will be written down there. And once this is clear, that's all. This equation what we have written here is the combined equations for 1 and 2. So this takes care of both of them simultaneously. Now the point to be noted is that how do you understand this is the t operator is operating on v1. So if an operator is operating on an element, we will get a new element. We can call the new element by the symbol w1. Therefore we can say that this is actually alpha times w1. So you can easily understand, right? W1 means an element that is obtained by operating t operator on the element v1. Like this you can understand. Similarly, when the t operator is operating on v2, we will get a new element and we will give the name w2. That's what I'm trying to write down. And once you write like this, then it is clear that the equation that is written down here is fine. Now there is something special here, so I would like to write down in this particular place. Whether you write like this or like this, it doesn't matter. Okay, so this is only an additional information saying that operator operating on element will be a new element. That's all. And finally, this combination, how it looks like. This is called combination because you see W1 means first element, not necessarily first element. We say one element. So W1 is one element in the vector space. W2 is another element in the same vector space. And these two elements are now combined. Combined means somehow combined, right? Some kind of plus is there, some multiplications are there. So somehow we have made a mathematical combination of W1 and W2. So such a combination, we are going to give the name linear combination. So the question comes, why do you want to call it by the name linear combination? The answer is that the operator T is a linear operator. Our starting point is a linear operator, right? So as long as you are going to use the operator as a linear operator, combination will be naturally a linear combination. If you are going to use nonlinear operator T, then the combination also will be nonlinear combination. And therefore this point is very important. We are always interested in linear combination. So I will write down that such a combination is known as the linear combination. Okay, so all this idea is clear, and therefore let me write down some kind of a simple definition. So in general, how can you say that if you are going to have a set of elements v1, v2, etc., n number of elements, okay, not only that, you are going to have some scalar belonging to a real number field, okay, then the linear combination is written down as a summation alpha I va. So now you can understand how the summation comes and why the suffix is required. All these things are clear. And you see that there are only two terms are there, and now there are several terms are there because if several of the vectors are there here. So because n numbers of vectors are there in the vector space, the summation runs up to capital N. That is the first thing. And here what is the conversion that we have made is that if you choose alpha, beta here, then the third one will be gamma, the fourth one will be delta, and then after that you don't know what to do. Okay, n number of symbols, where will you go and bring? And therefore, keeping beta, gamma, etc. is, that's not comfortable. And therefore, let us rename it as alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3, etc. So you can have, any number of constants. And therefore, if you are going to choose like that, then this becomes alpha 1, W1. That's what is written here. And similarly, beta 2, W2, that's what is written here. And remember, we don't have to worry whether same W is written or not. It depends on what is the symbol given for the set S. If the set S contains W1, W2, W3, then here also you write W. So it all depends on what is the definition that you are going to use. So in our definition now, I have already started by saying that the set of elements are denoted by the symbol V1, V2, etc. And therefore I am using V here. Okay, so don't confuse that, we have to keep W there. That's not a point. And now you can understand that this kind of whatever that you have, so with the product, there's a product here alpha, so a product is there and an addition is there, so such a combination is a linear combination. And now this particular expression is going to be the linear combination in general, because we are going to consider a large number of elements in the vector space. So that's all about it. And so I would like to finish this statement that I am writing. Okay, that's all. So it is a new element which is generated from S using the linear combination. Okay, so the point to be noted here, what is the statement that is written here is that this is linear combination, all that is fine, that's all fine. The question, there is something interesting point here. How many elements will be generated by this kind of addition? Now you have a summation of etc., right? That is how many element will you get? A single element or n number of element will you get? That you have to think. After finishing this, after finishing the simplification, alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2 plus etc. Everything you add. After adding, what will you get? I'll be getting some w1. That's what it is. New element I'll get. So combination of several vectors will be another vector. So this summation will give you one vector. So therefore, that is what I am trying to say. It is one extra new element is coming now. So one element is coming. Remember, only one element will come by doing this kind of addition. Now, how did you get this? It got generated. Okay, we have generated this new element starting from capital S. Capital S contain n number of elements. So this is a completely a new element which is not going to match with any of the n here. You're going to get a new element. Therefore, the point is that we are now able to generate a new element from the given set. That's the point. So how are you going to generate, how are you going to get this new element is using the linear combination. So LC means linear combination. So the next question naturally comes is, how many such summations can you do? That's what I would like to ask. This is one summation. The question is this the only option? Can you not generate another vector? Vector means element. Can you not generate another element? That is the question. The answer is that you'll have to think and tell what is the answer. What is alpha? If you think what is alpha, then you'll get the answer. Alpha is, remember, alpha is any number that you have to select from the set of real numbers. And how many numbers are there in a set of real numbers? Infinitely many. You tell any number and that's a real number, right? Whether it is fractional number, integer, all entire collection. In the very first class we have already seen what is this R here. The set of real number means what it is, that we have seen in the very beginning. And you are going to choose any of them. There is no restriction that you have to choose only that, this, etc. You can choose any number as you like. Now if you are going to have that kind of freedom, then you can choose, in the first time when you are doing the summation, I will choose some constants. And if I am asked to do the repeating, if I am asked to do once again you perform the linear combination, then I will pick up some other set of constants, because any constant can be chosen. For any constant, this is called a linear combination. And therefore, since you have the freedom of choosing any constant every time when you are performing the linear combination, the question is that how many such elements can be generated is literally infinitely many. Okay. Since number of elements in the real field is infinite, we also have that many options of choosing different values for the alpha I, and therefore the summation will give me new elements every time. And that's the answer. So exactly, so what I'm trying to say is that the first new element can be obtained by saying alpha 1 v1 plus alpha 2 v2, etc. So I will finish my calculation. And suppose if I would like to perform the linear combination once again, then I will be choosing totally a different set of constants, beta 1, beta 2, etc. And I'll be generating a new element w2. Like this I can generate w3, w4, etc. And there is no end for that. And that is what I'm trying to say, that the number of elements that I'm going to generate is infinitely many. Okay, so infinitely many w's, w means new elements, w's can be generated from only one set. Remember, it is generated from only one given set, that is capital S, and a given field R. It can be R or it can be C. Okay, R means real number set, C means complex number set. Whether it is that or this, whatever be the case, this is true. So this is very important conclusion. So I would like to make this kind of a conclusion now. Since we are able to generate infinitely many, now we have a new terminology for that. So I would like to write down that. So whatever we understood now can be written down in a simple statement. This means given a set capital S, and this capital S contains v1, v2, v3, etc. So this is a shorthand notation for v1, v2, v3, etc. N number of elements are there. So we don't have to write every time like that. If you say vi, that takes care. v1, v2, etc. Only thing is I, you have to tell up to where it is. I equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. up to capital N. So N number of elements are there. That's the meaning of this statement. And not only that, only set is not enough for you. You need one more extra thing. So set is required and field is required. So capital F is a field which can be real number field or complex number field. Then we will generate a new set. We can generate a new set given by capital W, which is nothing but small w1, w2, etc. So now you see the symbols. The small w1, w2 is what we have been discussing till now. And therefore you know that w1, w2, w3, like that, several of them you can generate. The set of all such elements is a vector space, and that vector space we are going to give the name capital W. And starting point, what is your starting point? Starting point, I have v1, v2, v3, etc. So that sequence of vectors is already a vector space, and the name that was present is capital S. So your starting vector space is capital S. At the end of the day, you have a new vector space capital W. So the question is, what is the connection between S and W? The answer is very simple. I got the capital W by doing the linear combination of elements of capital S. And that's all. That line is very important. So that's what exactly I'm going to write down now. So how did you get the new set? The new set that we got is what is known as the spanning set of the vector space capital S. This terminology is important, and mathematically we say that W equal to span of S. So if you want to write it in English sentence, we say like this: spanning set of capital S. Read this: spanning set of capital S is nothing but capital W. New set means W, right? New set means capital W. So remember, capital W is called the spanning set of capital S. If you don't want to write in English sentence, you write down like this mathematically. W is known as span of S. So this is the mathematical way of writing down the expression without explicitly writing like this. So this terminology is very important, frequently used, and therefore keep this. As I already told you, one important point is there. If S is a vector space, W will also be a vector space. I already told you, but now let me write down that. Okay, so this is what is known as the structure preserving. If original thing is a vector space, our new W will also be a vector space. Okay, so now we got a new concept. So what is the new concept you got is, you learned what is meant by the span of a vector space. So this is very important terminology. So ultimately, what is span? You can easily understand. Span came into picture because of the linear combination. And the linear combination, how did you get? It came from the property of property means the defining equation for the linear operator. So which means that if you know the definition for the linear operator, you understand what is linear combination, and the linear combination only is what you are going to call by the name span. That's all. So everything is now smoothly connected. So there is nothing like you have different definitions and read and memorize. Nothing like that is there. So it all follow from the basic definition of the linear operator itself. So now that you understood the span, etc., let us see, or let us take an example and then ask a question about the span. So that we will see now. I would like to go to a different place in the board and then write down an example. So the first example, let us consider some kind of transformation. And of course, you know what is this kind of symbol. This notation is well explained in the very beginning of the, or the last 4 lectures you read. All these definitions are explained. The meaning is like this. Capital T is a transformation. We can also call it by the name operator. We can also call it by the name map. So T is a map. So what is this R2 and R2 here is that R2 represents the set of points, 2 points you have to be there. That means x comma y. If x comma y is there, then we say it is R2. If x comma y comma z is there, then it is R3. It is not R to the power 3. Okay, this is not power. It only talks about the number of dimensions in the vector. So if you are going to have 4 of them, x comma y comma z comma, and one more thing, okay, whatever it is, whether you call it T or W, whatever, if 4 elements are there, then we say R4. And in general, when you are going to have n number of elements, then we say Rn. So Rn will be used frequently. Rn means the number of elements that you are going to have in a vector space will be n number will be there. That's the meaning of that. So this is the standard notation. So and then one more point. What is this arrow there? The important point about the arrow is that the input means I will be providing an x comma y value to this particular operator, and the operator will give me, or it will return me, another number which is another x comma y. That means this is old x comma y, and that will be a new x comma y. So this kind of the symbol for the map is very frequently used in the abstract algebra, and the detail has been explained in the previous class. So I am just trying to explain in a one-line statement right now. So a detailed explanation is already there in the last class. What is the meaning of this? Okay, right now the capital T is given to you. So right now T is given by an operator, and in particular the operator is defined like this. So because it is an example, some detail will be provided to you. So that's what I'm trying to write down. So an operator is given to you. Maybe I'll complete this particular problem. Yeah, so that's the problem. So the statement I would like to tell now. So what do you understand from the statement of the problem is this. Operator is given to you. How it is given is when the operator is operating on a particular vector, or we say element in the vector space that looks like xy, then the result is given by this. So that means this kind of equation clearly tells you that you have the element in the vector space xy, and that xy is written down here, and t is there, and this is written down in the form of the matrix, and therefore we can easily understand that the operator is a matrix operator. Okay, this kind of clarity will not be there in every problem. You may not be able to identify what is a T operator. In this case, T operator is the matrix ABCD. Okay, it may not be visible in many of the problems. So in this problem, it is explicitly visible that the T operator is nothing but the matrix ABCD. That's the point. And then what is the next point that I would like to say is you have x, y. How many elements are there? 2 elements are there, right? X comma y. So 2 elements are there. That is what is the R2. So here also R2 is there. What is the difference between this R2 and that R2 is this R2 is input. Input means input to whom? You are providing the input to the operator. So you see 2 elements are there. That 2 element is this R2. Okay, then on the right hand side what is there is operator operating on the element. This you have to simplify. Simplify means you finish the matrix multiplication. You have to simplify the matrix multiplication. After finishing the matrix multiplication, what is the dimension of the matrix or vector that you will be having? So that you know, right? A into x plus b into y. Then c into x plus d into y. What is the size? 2 elements are there, right? Not 4 elements. You don't have 4 elements, you don't have 6 elements. After finishing the matrix multiplication, we have only 2 elements. That 2 is this 2. That is the output. You understand that this entire thing is output. Input is only x comma y. So therefore, this input is this R2. Output means after finishing this calculation, what is my dimension? So that is R2 here. Okay, it is not necessary that every time R2 will go to R2. R2 may go to R3, sometimes R3 may go to R2, anything can happen. So that depends on the operator. Okay, operator will do something to that, and that is why these things are happening. Okay, these things are clear. So right now you are able to understand that the given operator capital T is the ABCD matrix, and then the question is that you'll have to show that the T operator is a linear operator. That's all. So the statement is quite simple and also quite easy. And now we are going to show that the operator is a linear operator. And of course, the calculation is quite simple. Only thing that you have to do is that you'll have to take the 2 equations that we have been discussing from the beginning of the today's class, and then let us therefore write down the 2 equation and verify whether they are satisfied or not. Okay, so here, so what I'm trying to say is, one second. So we will have to check if the 2 conditions, equation 1 and equation 2 are satisfied. That's what I'm trying to say. Now I would like to move from this place and then show where is equation and where is equation 2. It is there already. You've been seeing that for a long time now. So let me go back in the screen and then show the place where equation 1 and 2 is there, and then we'll come back here. So that is the place, right? 1 and 2 is there. So these are the 2 equations I am talking about. So okay, so once this is clear, so you'll have to write down. Let us consider first equation and then see what happens. Okay, consider the first equation and then you can write down what happens to T operating on V1 plus V2. Okay, this matrix writing takes time, so let me write down like this. So now you understand what is the meaning of this. T is an operator. Already you know that the T operator is the ABCD matrix. That's what you have written. V1 means first element in the vector space. How the element will look like in the vector space, that is also given in the problem. XY. It is given, right? Looks like XY. But however, we need 2 of them. So first element to second element. Therefore, accordingly, instead of saying xy, you say x1, y1. So that will be the first element. And similarly, the second element will be naturally x2 and y2. Now, once this is clear, it is only a matter of, you already know how to do matrix addition, how to do matrix multiplication, and therefore you can therefore proceed now. The calculation will be quite simple, but you have to be careful and then do it, because you can easily do some mistakes. Okay, so this is clear, right? This x1 and x2 we are adding, x1 plus x2 and then y1 plus y2. So this is over. This ABCD is as such. Now you perform the matrix multiplication. So I can write like this, open a bracket, and a times x1 plus x2, then plus b times, etc. Okay, so that is over. Similarly, c times x1 plus x2, and then the last term, and that's all. And now what we will do is we will try to split it into two matrices. You see that there is an addition there, right? So there is an addition. This is a matrix. So you have a matrix and then you have an addition inside. This means this will give you a suggestion that you are already adding two matrices. Otherwise, this plus will not come, right? Maybe you are adding two matrices. That is why this plus is coming. So therefore, based on that idea, let us split up into two matrices and write down. Now you can see that the one corresponding to the first element, x1 is first element, y1 is first element, x2 is second element, y2 is second element. All the first element we will write in the first matrix, all the second element you write it in the second matrix. That's what I'm trying to do. And similarly do here. And that's clear. So once this is clear, so there is a product here, a times x1. So there is a product is there and there is a plus is there. So this gives you a suggestion that this can be obtained by making a matrix vector multiplication. This is a matrix and that is a vector. Only then you will be getting this kind of a structure. Now since a times x1 is there, I will put a here and x1 here. B times y1 is there. So b I will put it here, y I will put it here, isn't it? Because we will be multiplying like this. So in the same way we will write down that, write AB here and then you write the x1 y1 there, so that this addition will come. Similarly, you finish the remaining part, plus is there, and same thing you repeat for the last part. And first question is that why did you do all this kind of rearrangement and manipulation, is that we know that ABCD matrix is the capital T operator. So now I can write down that this is T operator. So T operator is acting on the first element plus T operator operating on the second element. This is how you understand. But if it is in the previous step, you don't know the effect of the operator. So now you see operator is separately separated, the element is separated. So that is the reason why we are doing this manipulation. Now I will write down that this is T operator and this is the element. So T operator acting on the first element plus T operator operating on the second element, and that's all about it. But what is there in the left hand side? See, left hand side, you will forget. If you do some 10 steps, totally you will forget what is there on the left hand side. Let us go back and see what is there. You have T times v1 plus v2. So now that we will write down, it is T operator operating on combination v1 plus v2. So this is our conclusion. So our conclusion says that this particular equality is valid. That is important. Okay, after doing all the calculation, our understanding is that these two things happens to be equal, and therefore now we can write down that the first property is successfully satisfied. So you are happy, and therefore you can proceed to the second equation. So second equation, it is a multiplication with a scalar T operating on alpha times V. So let me put some brackets and then put ABCD, and then you have the alpha, right? So alpha is a scalar, so that will not be there in a bracket, whereas V is an element of the vector space, so that will be written as xy. So xy I will write here, and this alpha will be a scalar that I will write down here. And that's all about it. And the rest of the calculation is simplification. First of all, you finish the simplification alpha x. If you multiply this alpha x, alpha y, like that you keep it. Then after that you multiply with the matrix. So let me put a bracket once again. So that will be a alpha x plus b alpha y, and similarly c alpha x plus d alpha y. And once again, remember that this is some kind of product is there and addition is there. Therefore, this will give you a suggestion that some kind of matrix multiplication is going on. That is first thing. Second thing is alpha is common. There is alpha, 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 alpha. So take the alpha outside, and then the remaining thing can be written as a product of matrix vector. So you can now understand what will come there. That's all about it. Right, so when alpha is taken out, you can write down. The advantage is that this is now t operator, so I'll write down t operator. This will be the first element. You don't have to say first element because it is only one element. We have not used x1, y1, etc. So there is only one element, so there is no need for the suffix, and therefore I will write down that t operator operating on v. Left hand side, what was there? Yeah, that's there. So that means the conclusion is that this equality is maintained. Okay, what I am trying to say is that this equality was there, right? This equality should be maintained till the end. In some problems, what happens is that the equality will be broken. That means no longer it will be equal. So if such a situation comes, then you have to make a conclusion that it is a non-linear operator. So for the time being, what happened is the first property also satisfied, and then this is the second property is also satisfied. And therefore, what happens is that we are happy to say that the given matrix ABCD is a linear operator. That's our conclusion. But instead of saying what is it I am trying to write here is, instead of saying that only ABCD matrix is only that matrix is a linear operator, we are not going to say like that. But instead we say that you take any matrix. So that is the conclusion now. Even though we have solved only one problem, the understanding is important. Not only that this particular matrix ABCD, not only that matrix is linear, but also you take any matrix, whether it is going to be a square matrix or a rectangular matrix, whatever it is, all matrices will satisfy this kind of property. So this is really interesting. So you can always work out with a large size matrix, a rectangular matrix, etc. So after doing, if you have doubt, you can always do like that. And then after doing, you will make a conclusion that all matrices are linear operators. So that is the really interesting conclusion. And what is its consequence in our quantum mechanics is that we are going to have physically observable quantities as linear operators. And since matrix is a linear operator, ultimately what happens is our physically observable quantities can be represented by matrices. This is a conclusion coming if you are going to merge the two statements. Okay, you have to combine these two. Quantum mechanical observables are linear operators. Matrix is also linear operator. If you combine these two, what is the conclusion is that quantum mechanical physical observable can be represented by a matrix. That means Hamiltonian, for example, is an operator. You can always represent Hamiltonian in the matrix representation if you want. Okay, in the discrete dynamical system, you can always represent it by mathematical situation. A matrix can be represented. So there is one point to be noted here when you are going to make the matrix representation in quantum mechanics. If the system is discrete, okay, or if you are going to consider only discrete points in space, then only you can represent it by a matrix. If it is a continuum problem, okay, then instead of having the matrix, you will be having some kind of differential operator, d by dx. So for example, if I say d by dx is a continuous operator. You don't have discreteness there. But if you want to apply the derivative only at selected points in the one dimension, then it can be represented by a matrix. So you have to get the clarity between the continuous operator and the discrete version. For discrete versions, we can represent it by matrices. For continuous versions, you will maintain the original derivative as such. So that's the point. So okay, so once this is clear, let me go to another place and then consider the second example. So the second example, what I would like to do is that I would like to consider an example that is quite different from the first example. So they are not the same. Okay, there's going to be a considerable difference will be there when compared to the first examples, and therefore it is not that you can actually skip and run away. Okay, the second example will be a little different. In what way it is different, let us see. Okay, you are going to have a transformation, that's fine. Input is having two elements, that's fine. Output will also have two elements, that's also fine. But what is not clear here is that the operator T itself is not clear. In the last example, what is the operator means it is a square matrix ABCD, that was clear. But now in this problem, if you ask the question what is the operator T, it is not clear. It's not given, by the way, it's not given to you. But what is given to you is, if the operator is operating on an element, then the result is given by x and 10. This is only the result. But what was the operator? That is a black box operator. Now we don't know what it is. So that is this example. Now, if this being the situation, can you tell whether the operator is linear or not? So the question is determine whether the given operator capital T is linear operator or not. So that is the question, wherein you are unable to see the operator itself. That is the point. And of course, this is something which is quite a standard thing. What I mean to say is an element in the vector space will be represented by small letter v. Small letter v means element in the vector space. Capital letter V means vector space itself. Vector space itself means the set of all elements. That is a vector space. So small letter v means only one element in the vector space. So that element is given by xy. Now why it has only two elements is because we are discussing R2, R2. If you are going to discuss R3, R3, there will be xy, z will be there. That's the meaning. And whenever you want to perform the calculation, you require a field. And in this problem, the field is given to be the set of all real numbers. So these are the things that are provided to you. And using the two properties that you already know, you'll have to verify whether the operator is a linear operator or not. So the problem is, of course, fairly simple, very simple, but we'll have to you'll have to work out those few steps. Okay, only few steps are there, but if you work it out, it will be very easy. So let me therefore write down this particular point. The nature of the operator itself is not available to us. So anyway, we don't require it. So it's only an information. Okay, I am trying to say that the operator is not available to you or it is not visible to you, but that doesn't mean that this problem is not solvable. We can of course solve the problem. This is an additional point, that operator T need not be visible all the time. Okay, that's fine. Now let us take the first equation. So what is your first equation? Let us write down. That's your first equation. And now this T is an operator. Since we do not know what kind of operator it is, I can't put a bracket and say that it is a matrix. I can't do that right now. So T will be T only. So I will put a T only. But one thing, what is clear is after T, there is a V1 and a V2. So what is V1? V1 is the first element in the vector space. How it will look like? See how it is looking like, you see. So V is an element in the vector space that is going to look like XY. How do you know that? Means it is already there here. You remember one thing, that even if it is not given in the question paper like that, here itself it is given. Here itself it is visible. So the one inside the square bracket is known as the input. The one that appears on the right side of the equal to sign is the output. So this is output. Input is T of something, T of something. That something is the input. So that input is the V1. Okay, so you'll have to generate V1, V2, etc. by putting an appropriate suffix. And therefore, now you know what to write. You have to open a bracket here. And V1 means X1, Y1. V2 means X2, Y2. Like that you have to write down. So therefore, let me put a bracket and then write down that. Yeah, that's all. And now, after that, the calculations or the simplification is quite easy. So we can write down like this, add X1 plus X2. And the second one is Y1 plus Y2. And now comes the important point, how to simplify this. Okay, for simplifying, So you have to see the 10 there. So what I'm trying to say is, how to simplify is, T operator operating on the element of the vector space will be given by, you have to understand how it is given by. It is given by first component is remaining as such, x remains x, like that you have to make the transformation, and whatever is there in the second component, that component will be replaced by 10. Isn't it? Because it is a black box operator, we don't know what it is, but ultimately we can understand what is happening. The first component of the vector will be remaining as such, nothing will happen to the original, whereas the second component will be completely thrown away, and then 10 will be kept in place of that. This is how you understand how the operator is acting on the vector. If this is clear, now you'll have to come here. Now x1 plus x2 is something. When t is acting on that something, what will come out? What will come out means this is the first component, because this top one is the first component, bottom one is the second component. So the first component, top component, what happens is remains original. So x will remain as x. Therefore, x1 plus x2 will remain as x1 plus x2. That's clear. What will happen to y1 plus y2? Y1 plus y2 is the second component, the one which is there in the bottom. So the second component will be totally thrown away, and then 10 will be kept in place of that. And that's what you have to do. And let me therefore write down. So x1 plus x2 and then it 10 here. That's all. And once you do that, now you see that t is not there. T is not there in this step. That means T is operated on this. This operator operates on this and got the result. Once the result comes, that's all. The job of T is over and T will not be there here. So this is the simplified expression corresponding to T of V1 plus V2. So now comes the interesting point. Now how are you going to decompose? Now can you write like this? So can you write it as x1 10, then x2 10, and then put an addition? So you understand what it is. Because x1 plus x2 is there, we may be it is most probably the equation should look like this, so that x1 plus x2. But the trouble comes here. If I put a 10 here, and suppose you can put 5. You can always ask like 5. If I put 5 plus 5, 10 comes. But there is a trouble. No, you cannot put 5 there, because already your black box operator tells you that the second component will be always 10. So therefore you can't put any number like 5 and all, etc. And therefore it has to be 10 only. So if it has to be 10 only, now if you perform the addition, what happens is x1 plus x2 is there here, that's fine, but this 10 plus 10 has to be 20 here. But however, we are not able to now maintain this. Therefore what happens is this equal to was equal to here. Now the question comes, the trouble comes to the equal to now. And therefore now we come to a conclusion that this particular equal to is been broken. That means it is no longer equal to now. And that is what I am trying to say, that you put a not equal to now. So our left hand side, what was there? So left hand side is the T operator operating on V1 plus V2. So left hand side is T operator operating on V1 plus V2. Now you understand what is the purpose of decomposing into two parts, because x110 is, what is x110 means T operator operating on V1 will be x110. Otherwise x110 will not come. Similarly, T operator operating on V2 will be x210. So this part is clear, no trouble in that. But the trouble came, where is the trouble coming is that there is a 10 here, but there is a 10 here. But if there were a 20 or something like that, we will be able to say that they are equal. So for the time being, for this problem, what happens is, until this step, all equality was maintained, but afterwards, it is not equal. And therefore, we say that the first property is not satisfied. So the moment one property is not satisfied, you can immediately make a conclusion that that particular operator is non-linear. So that is the conclusion. So we can write down that. Okay, those statements I would like to finish it now. So the meaning is that the moment you understand, okay, what do you understand is, the moment you say that the first equation is not satisfied, the given operator capital T is not a linear operator. Of course, you don't have to say non-linear operator, but you say that it is not a linear operator. So that is our conclusion that we are going to write. There is no need to check for the second equation. Actually, there is no need. You can make a conclusion. But however, for the purpose of understanding, Suppose if you are going to apply the second equation, how the steps will look like. How the steps will look like. For the purpose of learning, let us now apply the second equation also. Okay, only for the purpose of learning. Okay, not for conclusion. Conclusion is already made. Okay, so let us now write down the second equation. So I'll write down t times, t operating on alpha. Alpha is operating on the element xy. So open a bracket and put xy there. And that is equal to the t operator operating on, okay, that is simplifying. Alpha x, alpha y, that's all. Okay. And this is important. So now what happens is that the t operator is now operating on this particular element. Okay, when it is operating on the element, you will be getting alpha x and 10. And if I am going to, suppose if I want to take the alpha outside, then how it looks like? Then it looks like x there and 10 by alpha. Only 10 by alpha should be there. Only then I can take the alpha common. And now the trouble comes. So therefore, as usual, you put a not equal to and then say this. So our conclusion is now clear that the second element, we have to maintain only 10. 10 by alpha is not allowed. So therefore, since 10 is not there at the last step, what happens is actually this is a not equal to. Okay, we can write down that this is not equal to t of v. Okay, so therefore conclusion is that the second property is also not satisfied, and therefore the given map is not a linear operator. Map and operator are identically same, so that's why I'm trying to interchange the terminology. Given operator is not linear, that's fine, or we can say that given map is not linear. So they are all the same, and that's fine. So till now you are able to understand. The way in which you can classify the given operator to be linear or not linear. So this is quite an important concept. And probably we'll stop here, and in the next class we will discuss more about the spanning set. Okay, we have been talking about the spanning set, right? So that is going to give some additional consequences that we will see in the next class.